New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.
Good morning, everyone. I'm always surprised to see myself on camera, but it's wonderful to have everyone here today. I'm thrilled to have delved into the archives and found a magazine. You know, I've kind of heard that there was a magazine that preceded our magazine that we know of today, and the title of it is Religious Science, rather than Science of Mind magazine. And it has a subtitle of A Magazine of Christian Philosophy. And it's published by the Institute of Religious Science and the School of Philosophy Incorporated. And this was located on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, California. And, you know, one thing that I kind of looked at too was the cost of the magazine was 25 cents. And for a yearly subscription, it was $2.50. So this was in 1927. And, reading about the Institute of Religious Science and School of Philosophy Incorporated, it was a non-sectarian college of metaphysics. And this is what Ernest Holmes was the dean of. And, you've probably heard that Ernest Holmes, saw us as teaching, not necessarily a church. And this is the first iteration of, kind of an organization of religious science. And the object of the Institute, and I'm reading from the cover of the magazine, primarily the Institute of Religious Science and School of Philosophy Incorporated is an institution that is in no way competes with any established church doctrine, existing solely for the purpose of enlightenment science and its application to the greatest of all arts, that of life itself. For those who wish a scientifically deduced course of mental training, undivorced from the highest concept of truth, For those who desire honesty, intelligence, freedom from any and all sense of mystery, and above all else, practicability in their understanding of unity, this school has been founded, offering as it does a course in the science of mind and religion so comprehensive in its scope that its appeal is general. Teachers, practitioners, specialists along those lines, and those who desire to remold their own understanding as an aid toward greater harmony of individual expression will find herein unique opportunities for guidance. And then it lists the trustees at that time. And, I think it's always good for us to go back and kind of get the history of, this organization that we now know as Centers for Spiritual Living. And I chose this magazine because on the cover it says, "The Greatest Lesson Ever Taught" by Ernest Holmes, or Ernest S. Holmes. And I thought, wow, I want to know what the greatest lesson ever taught is. And I got it, and it's a fairly long article, and it is about the parable of the prodigal son. And we all are, anyone who has any kind of training in the Bible or has attended one of the Christian denominational churches, you have probably been, you've been introduced to the prodigal son. And there's so many different interpretations of it. And, there's several different metaphysical interpretations of it. But this is the take of Ernest Holmes on this particular parable of Jesus. And, I think he does an incredible job explaining it. And it takes into account, the kind of interest that the 20th century had in, this nascent psychology that was coming out, modern psychology, let's call it that, modern psychology. I think that people have always, through experiencing one another and being with one another, shaman and, people who were healers did have a deep insight into the psychology of their patients. And, in the 19th century, modern psychology came into being. So, he's kind of drawing on this. And it may be that he did reading in psychology, and he did, of course. And it could be that, this was in the culture. This was what people were very interested in at this time. They were really looking at psychology as a way of looking at soul, because psyche in Greek actually means soul. So when we are looking at psychology, the other meaning is we're looking at the soul of the human being. So this is the greatest parable of, or the greatest lesson ever taught, according to Ernest Holmes in 1927. And, I found that, basically everything that we teach in religious science is located in this article. So if you want to get a good sense of what religious science is, all you have to do is read this one article. So in that sense, I believe it is the greatest lesson ever taught, that this one parable could contain, those basics of religious science in such a very powerful way. And the basic thing is, he says that Jesus taught this, and he taught that as that God turns to us as we turn to him. Of course, he's using that kind of gendered language that that we no longer use. And of course, Ernest Holmes discarded a lot of that language as well to try to get at what the divine is. But this is sort of the convention of the age, or the convention of the times to use that kind of gendered language. So just forgive that as we do this reading. So there is a reciprocal action between the universal and the individual mind. So those are two basic tenets that we talk about in religious science, the universal mind and the individual mind. So we see those terms already showing up in this writing. And the Spirit is ready to help us whenever we turn to it with a great determination to re-enter a state of harmonious unity with life and with God. And the greatest lesson, according to Ernest Holmes in this article, is to learn the unity of love and law. And the necessity of law in shaping a divine individuality, and the necessity of experience in awakening to this divine individuality. And in philosophy, there are whole schools of thought that are, directly, they posit experience as, as the teacher, as the only way of knowing is through experience. And, we do hold that view that only through experience do we learn, do we have this evolution of the soul that occurs through experience and the individuation, having a hard time saying that this morning, of that individual soul. So there's this is sort of well, this is the illusion, right? The illusion of separation from the whole is, sort of this problem that we're looking at. In order to have these individual expressions and individual experiences, there is that illusion of separation. And we do spend, our time as human beings in coming to self-awareness of ourselves as individuals. And then as we mature, if through experience, we have the opportunity, multiple opportunities, to experience the unity of spirit with spirit. There's never a separation, but that we know it, we experience it in our life. And this happens in various ways, but I want to get back to this story. Otherwise, I'll get off on a tangent here. So this is all contained in here. So the love of God is love and God is law. And the love of God is divine givingness, the eternal outpouring of the Spirit through its creation. So God is always giving. It's that givingness. It's constant. It never stops. Creation didn't happen in at some point in the past. Creation is an ongoing process that is continual. And as that continual process, we are a part of that creation, a part of that continuation of this continuous force that is creating life. That life is always there. And the law of God is the logical law of cause and effect in the natural world, which says we can have only what we take. Since the taking is a mental and spiritual act, as well as a physical one, we can take only that to which we are receptive. Jesus taught, "It is done unto us as we really believe." So this is this again, right here is the law, mental equivalent, right? That's the mental equivalent. It's not about just taking, like taking by force or taking because we want it. There is that spiritual aspect to it. And as we mature spiritually, uh, by making choices, learning and coming into who we are as spiritual beings, um, we have the opportunity to uh, to see this givingness and of the divine, and as we are receptive to it, we receive the highest good. And he says the thought of that is ever father to the act. So, I think that also, when Ernest Holmes is talking, in our teachings, we see, the feminine principle and the masculine principle represented. And, that's kind of a very Jungian idea uh, of the anima and the animus within the individual. And as we see it, that's also operative in the spiritual world, that there is a masculine principle and a feminine principle. And we assign certain qualities to that masculine and feminine principle. But they come together in every individual. So when he says, the thought is ever father to the act. Thought is that empowering principle that is considered kind of a masculine, masculine energy, is that empowering. That thought is ever the father to the act. So thought is the father to the act. Our individuality enables us to choose, but ignorance of the true nature of being often causes us to choose evil rather than good. So, we see evil coming up in this writing, and often we don't often see evil in our teachings. And, I think that when we talk about evil, evil is generally, the law misused. We're misusing the law when we are doing things that are evil. And most of the time that comes from ignorance, um, and of, ignorance of who we are and how the universe works. So we are outside of I guess we're outside of the law in some sense. And, we are given that opportunity. This is where he talks about free will in this article. And he doesn't call it free will. He calls it, we have the ability to choose, that we would never be able to individuate if we did not have the ability to choose. So, as divine sparks, right? If we're just a spark and we're choosing, um, we're making these choices. It's sort of like the kindling there, I think. This is the way that I'm reading it. Sort of like that's the kindling that we're adding. And we can't really build that spiritual fire without making choices that are in alignment with the spirit. So if we're not making those choices in alignment with spirit, the spark doesn't grow. It remains just a tiny spark rather than a fully realized flame or fire, right? And and he reiterates, experience alone will teach us what is best to choose. It's just like when we're children and we have to get up and walk around and fall down before we realize, oh yeah, if I balance myself better, then I'm going to walk. I'm not going to fall. I'm going to walk. So he's putting this forward as analogous to what we do in our spiritual life. And, he goes on to say, you know, he says that the universe is a perfect union. It is not divided, nor is it divisible. So that's the wholeness of the universe. There may be we may be a part of the universe. Well, we may think we're separate from the universe, but we're not. We're a part of it. And, we probably, the way that in my tradition, with Native thought, we talk about, the interconnectedness of life, the web of life, that just that everything is one, that everything is absolutely necessary to the whole. And this is the thought that's coming through this as well. And those are universal truths. When we have the truth is there, that we are not separate from this whole. We make up the whole. We make up the whole. And without all of these different pieces of the whole could not exist. But it's not divided. It's never divided up. There's not, the universe isn't saying, okay, well, I'm mad at you guys, so I'm going to go off and do my own thing, right? It can't. I guess it could say that, but it really can't do that. And we find that in this story of the prodigal son. And he says that Jesus begins the story by saying that there's two sons. And he says that this is a mystical symbolism, meaning that as the Son of God, man has the right of self-choice. So there's the Son that remains with the Father in that household. And there's the Son that goes off. And, I've talked about some teaching parables with people before, and they just get all freaked out and they say, oh, that's duality. So I was really happy to see that Ernest Holmes addresses this. He addresses this in this piece of writing. He says this carries with it the possibility of an apparent duality, but of course, not a real one, and the possibility of experience the good and evil. Moses referred to the same possibility when he said he had set a blessing and a curse before the children of Israel, that they must choose whom they would serve. The two sons referred to in the story of the prodigal allegorically denote the two states of consciousness possible to all persons, for without this possibility there can be no real individuality. Man is a conscious, self-knowing mind, equipped with volition and choice. He is an individual and can do as he chooses. So this is what it means to become an individual, is to have that choice and to do as we choose, and at the same time learn what those choices create for us. And we are every day choosing, and this is where this self-mastery comes in. When we are learning and keeping track of what happens when we make certain choices, then we are able to grow from that. And the next time we are faced with a choice, we have experience that helps us choose better. We can always choose better and get a different outcome than the one that we experienced previously. because, according to Ernest Holmes, the law is relentless. If we go against the law, natural law of the universe, it may appear that we're getting good in the material world for a certain amount of time, but it doesn't turn out to be the real thing. It's a false kind of reality, and in that falseness, there can be a lot of damage that is done. And in the story, he goes on to say that, when the younger son comes and says, I want my portion of my inheritance. And, the father says, okay, there's no question. And for Ernest Holmes, he says, well, you know, there's always that yes there, that, okay, you take your portion, you take your portion. And he says that this is because God doesn't argue, that there's no opposition to God, so there's no argument. And what a concept, right? That there's no opposition. We're used to thinking of opposition, aren't we? In everything that we do, there's there's that opposite. That we're opposed to this or we're opposed to that. And we see that the path of non-resistance is a very difficult path, but it is a spiritual way of solving and coming into harmony with everything. And this whole story is a story of the awakening of individuality, as I've mentioned. And it's that place in evolution, according to Ernest Holmes, where one wakes to the fact that he is a real person with volition and free will. So the capability to make things happen and the freedom of choice. Now, when the son first became aware of himself as an individual, he was supposed to be in heaven or in his father's house. We all came from heaven. There's nowhere else that we could have come from, right? All come from God and will ultimately return to God. So, this is all in our consciousness, that we think that we have set out on this journey, and that's that journey of experience. But in reality, when we wake up, we find that we are in God, no matter where our journey takes us. We wake up either in this life or at some point, and know that we are in God. There's nothing else except God. And I love this parable to begin with, because I know that I use this phrase over and over again. When the son had received his share of goods, he went into a far country. And I use that phrase. I've used it for many years to describe that place that is very confusing. It's the far country. It's away from that center of being, and it is consciousness. Far in the country. And Ernest Holmes describes this as a descent into the outer rim of spiritual existence. So, being far from the center, in other words. And that's how I've experienced it. I've experienced it as that. And sometimes I'll say, oh, yeah, I've been in the far country. I've been there. I've been in the far country for the past few weeks or, whatever it might be. And, of course, none of this is in vain. If we take the lessons from the far country and bring it back to center, we are enriched because we know that this is all a part of the journey. And he goes on to say, just as soon as our consciousness is detached from spiritual wholeness, we become exhausted. There is nothing to fall back on. We no longer draw from that inexhaustible reservoir of eternal existence. Consequently, there is nothing left, and we are in want. And I think that, I know that's been my experience of the far country, to just feel exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, just feeling that exhaustion and feeling like, and sometimes, in despair, uh, until I can reel myself back to that place where I know is my true home. And aren't we all, we are all seeking that home, right? I think that's kind of our mission in this lifetime, is seeking home in a way. And when we find it, in God, we know it. We know it. And when we go away from it into the far country, we know it and we feel it and we experience it. And this is so filled with different references to the Bible with this story. And, of course, the story is told by Jesus, who was a Jew. And, the prodigal son ends up living with the swine, right? And which would be, a most horrible existence, because swine were considered, being animals that are not eaten, are they're filthy, and they have a lot of connotations of being unhealthy, and for the Jews. And he had to go and live with the swine, and so that depicts how far he has fallen, that he is with these um, hogs and pigs and swine. And he brings this back to the story of Adam and Eve. And, this is where, there's so many interpretations, and I think that he brings it back very well. He says that um, the one that he says that we're reminded of another symbol, the one used in the Old Testament, that of the serpent, which cast Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. The serpent, so he's making an analogy. The serpent meant the outer rim of spiritual existence, the life principle viewed from an isolated and materialistic base. And I like that. I like that he is pointing out the isolation and the materialistic basis of going to that place where you're just thinking about materialism. And if we look at the begin, the 19th century, yeah, it was very materialistic, and there was a lot of damage done. And sometimes I've seen examples of some of the people who have we would call them robber barons, right? And some people call them robber barons, I'll put it that way, who extracted labor from people and paid them a pittance. It was basically, uh, wage slavery, uh, and, kind of consolidated their wealth and didn't share that wealth with everyone, and extracted natural resources, did destruction, all of this kind of thing. This is what he is talking about, that isolated idea, of building material wealth for the individual and being based there, just staying based there. And, we know that some of these people um, woke up at some point and realized, my gosh, look what I've done. I've amassed all of this wealth, but what have I really done with my life? And some of them have, became philanthropists and, got out of their businesses, and we're seeing that today as well. We're seeing people who are deciding that they're going to give away their wealth. And, there's a group of people who have may amass tremendous amount of wealth, and they've decided that they will give it away. They're going to give it away and put it into causes that they feel will have the ability to make a huge difference in the lives of human beings all over the world. So that's a waking up into from that isolated materialistic way of life into a more spiritual way of being, a way of seeing the whole. And, he sees that serpent as the life principle as well. And, I think this is where, we get a little slippery here too, because, the the serpent is the life principle. And a lot of biblical scholars have posited that this eating from the tree of knowledge is actually uh, us going out into into experience, out into this experience of becoming individuals, of experiencing the world, gaining knowledge, and transforming that knowledge into wisdom. So, viewed from a material basis alone, it casts us from a perfect state. So, if we're just looking at it materially, this is what he says: lifted up, that is, viewed from a true meaning of unity of God, it heals. And I think I put that into my own words. It heals. Here's the choice again, only stated in different words. The difference is not in the thing itself, but in the way that we look at it. And, the example of the robber barons, so called robber barons, is that looking at the material wealth alone without the greater, a bigger picture of the unity of life and the cost of that particular way of using things. Um, not seeing that, and maybe not even knowing it, being ignorant of it. Um, we have the ability to choose again and take those corrective measures because we have experience as individuals, which goes into our collective experience, so that we all grow from what we've learned. And he says, some people might say, well, why didn't God come to the aid of his prodigal son, right? And of course, this is the age-old question: why, uh, why is life the way that it is? And life is the way that it is because it is for us to experience, for us to grow as individual souls. And sometimes I think about this in terms of being being uh, the hands of God, kind of that feeling, hands of God, these feeling creatures that are exploring, uh, all of this creation. We are that of God, and if we didn't exist, we would not be putting into this unity, that feeling, that knowing, this this life in material form. And it's really wondrous, it's to me, I believe in mystery, I do. And it's a mystery of life, it's one of those huge mysteries. And I love that mystery. I love that we are in the mystery, that we have the ability to choose, make choices, and be one, and come back to knowing that we are one with the one. And this is what Ernest Holmes is getting at with the story of the prodigal son. And we know, at the end, the prodigal son just realizes, you know what? I'll run back to my father. I'm running back to my father. This is not working over here in the far country. And how many times have I felt that way? This is not working. I've got to get back. I have got to get back to center. I have got to get back to the divine, to the sacred. I have to know it, experience it, feel it, and embody it. I can't be out here somewhere isolated and alone. That's not that's not reality. I'm in the far country. I'm not in reality anymore. So come back, come back. And when that happens, we know that the father knows that his child is coming. He just knows the child is coming. And he embraces him. He dresses him in the finest of clothes, even though the son is ready to just be a servant somewhere, the lowest of the low servants in his father's house. But his father welcomes him and embraces him and holds him and prepares a place at the table, an honored place at the table for him. So it's a huge contrast between being with the swine and eating at his father's table. So this is a powerful, powerful teaching. And I would agree with Ernest Holmes that this is the greatest lesson ever taught. That this is that lesson that contains, the teachings of religious science. We have everything coming here, our ability to choose, becoming an individual, the unity of life, the masculine and feminine principles, the universal mind, the individual mind. All of these things are contained in this one story. So I'm just going to encourage you to go to the archives and take a look at this one teaching, because it is very, very good. And it felt as fresh today as any talk I've heard now, right? And it is a very, very powerful teaching. And I don't know if we had any questions this morning. I haven't checked because I was so into telling the story. But I am so happy that you are here with us. And I am just so glad that we are studying together. And I'm hoping that we had sound. I see a Facebook user who said that there was no sound, but I hope that corrected itself, because I noticed that I was I was freezing sometimes, and I do have a connection that is good. So I'm hoping that we did go through. You did hear us this morning. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. And a Facebook user says, how do you practice oneness? And that is a very good question. You know, it is our consciousness. What is oneness? That's when we have that realization. We have that self-realization. Self-realization means that we are with, as the story states, with the Father. We're home. we're in that oneness of being. And we do that, we arrive at that state through our spiritual practices. We arrive at that state through, sometimes just through the grace of God. You know, sometimes I'll be walking and all at once I will feel the grace of God just pouring over me. And, you know, it's a numinous experience to feel that oneness. And when we feel that oneness, what occurs? Well, we have a choice. We can go out in the world and we can, you know, I feel like my calling is to spread joy. You know, I love I love people. And when I see them, I smile at them because they just delight me so much. And, you know, I love just seeing all the different faces. I love seeing little children playing and doing the things that they do. And I love, you know, I delight in people. And I also feel for people when they're suffering and sorrow. And I feel like, you know, as we lift ourselves in spirit, when we make that choice to be one with God, that's how we practice oneness. We practice oneness through being kind to one another. We practice oneness by seeing a need that we know we can fill, and that becomes our work. That's practicing oneness, seeing our relationship, seeing everyone and everything in creation as our kin. That is practicing oneness. That is being in alignment with law. That is bringing those two parts of what God is, right? They're different elements of God, love and law, bringing those together in our own lives. That's the practice of oneness. So I just know that as we go forth this week, that we are home. We are home with and one with the one. And that we do go out and whatever we are called to do, whatever you are called to do, you take that and you use it as your own superpower, whatever it might be. You know, everyone has their own gift, and that gift is there to share. And that is true individuation. So have a wonderful week, everyone, and blessings to all.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.